So I'm going to show you how to do a simple cutting from a plant, and so that you can root that plant from just a stem cutting. There's a couple things you want to do first in order to be safe. One, you want to wear gloves if you're going to be using a rooting hormone, and I'm using a powdered rooting hormone here. This would be the one of the choices that you have on the lab selection. The other thing you want to do is to wet your perlite. One, because you don't want to breathe the dust, and two, your cuttings will dry out really fast if you don't do that. So I'm just going to pour some water on them, onto the perlite. So this white stuff here is perlite. This is a 6-pack that we've set up our experiment in. And then to take a simple cutting, you want to make sure that you're taking a stem and that you are getting at least 2 nodes. So you want at least 2. There's a node here, this is where the leaves are attached. There's a second node right here, and then there's a third node right down here. So on this cutting, I'm going to just take 3 nodes, and I'm going to cut about 1/8 of an inch below where that node is. And then I'm going to cut the leaves off on the bottom. So you can see there's the node right here, and then the stem that I cut below. I also want to take this flower off because we don't want the plant to take its energy away from rooting and try to make a flower. So we're going to get rid of the flower. And then you could either remove these leaves or you could just trim them up a little bit. Either way, just kind of reduce the amount of water that the plant has to provide the leaves while it's trying to root. So that's your cutting. And then you're going to take and dip that cutting just a little bit in your rooting hormone. So you just dip a little bit on the end, very light. You don't want to overdo it. And then you would make a hole in your media, and you would place the cutting in there. Now, when you're setting up your experiment, you're going to have labels and a marker, and you'd want to make sure that you're marking which cuttings you put the rooting hormone on and which ones are your controls where you left the hormone off. And so you'd want to be very careful in making sure that you label each cell with what you did with it. Oh, and if you're comparing 2 hormones, you would want to mark those as well. Now, if you're not using this kind of plant material to make the cutting, but you're using something really small, leaved and small nodes, then you can just take a cutting at about 2, inch or 2 long, and then just strip some of the leaves off the bottom. So you don't need to worry about where the node is necessarily. Just remove some of the leaves, and then that could be your cutting. So you can have it look like that. Or if you have something really large, like this princess flower, you could just take 1 or 2 cuttings, 1 or 2 nodes, and let's see. Actually, this is a better one you can see, I think. So I could just go right below here and cut that, and then just cut these leaves off. And that could be my cutting. So I'd have there's 1 node here and 1 node there. So you have 2 nodes. Once you've done your whole cuttings and everything, and you let them root for a while. This usually takes anywhere from about 3 weeks to 8 or 9 weeks, depending on the plant. Then the plants will come out with rooted cutting, and you can just kind of gently tug on them to see if they've rooted. Here's one that has rooted, and you can see that it has roots that have developed on there. They're in amongst the perlite, and you can see all the roots that have developed with that. So that would be a finished cutting. That's it.